Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this cute wirework pumpkin cabochon pendant. Now you have different options of how to decorate these pumpkins with little loops or vines, and I'm going to show you how to do all of it. And if you like any of these pumpkins in particular, they will be available for sale in my shop. You'll find a link straight to that in the description box down below. Otherwise, if you want to learn how you can make your own, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, the wire that I'm using is a regular round silver coated copper wire. The first gauge here is a 0.8 mil. That's going to be our base wire, and then I've got a 0.4 mil that I'm going to use for the weaving wire. Of course, we also need the stone that we want to capture. I'm using an oval agate gemstone cabochon, and this measures about 3 by 4 centimeters, but you can really use many different sizes and shapes of cabochons that you prefer, because pumpkins also come in many different sizes and shapes. Then of course we also need our findings, so I've got a chain here to finish off the necklace with, a lobster claw clasp, extended chain, and just a few jump rings to put it all together. As for the tools, I've got some flush cutters so we can cut our wire, tweezers and nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and then I'm just going to use this crochet hook here to help make our spirals and also shape the bail. You can of course use whatever kind of mandrel you have. Now, like always, the tools and material list will be in the description box below the video along with helpful links. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. Then we need to cut some lengths of our wire, and I have 4 lengths here of the 0.8 mil of about 40 centimeters each. And as for the 0.4 mil, I'm just going to leave that attached to the rail, that way we have minimum wastage. So then what we need to start doing is attach all our wires together here using the 0.4 mil. So I'm just going to take one at a time, and then you want to find roughly the midpoint of this length of wire. Then first of all, I just want to leave a short little tail, put it behind the base wire, and then wrap it around once to attach it. And then I'm going to straight away grab my next length of wire, place it above the first one and on top of the little tail there, and then I'm going to take my 0.4 mil over the top of both of these base wires like that. Make sure the wraps are laying flat next to each other, and then I'm going to come up between the 2 wires and then just push that down nice and tight, then come over the top of just a single wire by itself, the very top one there, and then down behind them both. Now what I also personally like to do is use my pliers to help push my wraps nice and tight together. So this is basically one round of the weave, and this is the diagonal wire weave. So I'm just going to do a few more rounds. So I'm just going to start again. We just want to come over the top of the bottom base wire, which means down between the 2, and then come over the top of both of them, and then come up between the 2 so we can wrap around the top one by itself. And then again down behind, and then just make sure to push that nice and tight. And then I'm just going to do one more round of this. And now I've got my 3 rounds here. I'm going to start another one. So go around the bottom one by itself, go over the top of both of them, and then come up between the 2. So far the same. But now what I want to do is add in another base wire. So I'm just going to grab another one, place that as the new top one. And then what I'm going to do is take my weaving wire and go over the top of the 2 top base wires there. So basically we've now added in another wire, and now I'm going to come up between the 2 that I just wrapped over the top of. So we kind of just added an extra wrap into the round, and then just around that top one by itself. And again, make sure that your wraps are nice and tight. And that is now one round with 3 base wires. So here again, I'm going to do the same amount of rounds as the first time. So another 2 to make 3 in total. And after that, we have 1 base wire left. So I'm going to bring that in the same way. Lay that as the new top one. And then we just want to start another round again. Now incorporating that new wire in as well. So we have all 4 base wires. Just making our weave here in the exact same way, but then just also incorporating that top one. So do 1 full round here, and then I'm just going to make 3 full rounds again, so another 2, and this is then going to be the midpoint. And then what we need to do is work our way back down. So like I said, this is kind of the midpoint. I'm going to start another round, so just work your way up towards the top again, but this time I'm then just leaving out that top wire. So I'm going to come up between the 2 middle ones so I can wrap around the second top one by itself, and that is an equivalent to the wraps we did before, the ones in the middle there. And then I just want to do this another 2 times, so again I end up with the same amount of rounds as all the other times. And finally, I just want to then do another 3 rounds around the bottom 2 base wires as well, just like the ones where we started out. And once we then have our weave section in place here, can just flip it around to the back and we can get rid of the excess wire. So what I'm going to do is take my flush cutters, and just where I did my final wrap, that's around a single base wire. So I'm going to cut off the excess right where the wire basically wraps around, and then you just want to make sure to push down the very end so it's not sticking out. And you just want to finish off the other end as well. So now we have all the wires attached. We need to bring in the stone here because we need to start bringing these around the sides of the stone so we can obviously start to capture it. So what I'm going to do is this piece that I weaved, I'm going to place that on one side and I'm just going to do it on the bottom widest side of the stone, and then just hold on to it the best you can. So I'm pushing the weave section there against the stone at the midpoint, and then I'm going to bring all these wires as if they were one around the side and up towards the top. And then here at the top where the wires almost reach the midpoint, and then when I kind of put in a bit of a bend and bring the wires back upwards like that. And then of course we need to do the same thing with the wires on the other side. So just hold everything in place the best you can, and then take all the lengths of base wires and bring them around the side of the stone up towards the top. And again, at about the midpoint there, we need to put a bend into it and bring the wires back upwards. So we end up with something a bit like that. Now it doesn't have to be perfect just yet because we can still make adjustments, but the most important thing is just that we start to capture it in place and get the shape in there. So once I have the basic shape in place here, I can just remove the stone, and then what I want to do is grab the 0.4mm wire again, and we need to attach all these wires at the top. And I've got hold of my top wire, so I have the 4 wires from one group and 4 from the other, lying flat next to each other but up against each other. Then I'm going to take my 0.4mm wire here, and then I basically just want to start wrapping this around all of the wires at the top. And I'm just making sure that all the wraps as well are nice and flat next to each other so they're not overlapping, and just wrap it down towards the base where the wires start to meet up. And make sure to make it nice and tight as well. Now with that, I'm just going to bring the stone back in so we make sure the wires hold their shape. And what we want to do is basically start to get these base wires into position so they start to look like a pumpkin, and also obviously so they capture the cabochon in place, because right now it's obviously coming out there, just lifting off the wire. So what I'm going to do is I like to kind of hold it down against the surface to begin with, and then I'm going to be pushing down on the wraps that I did, and then just taking one length of wire at a time after where they're coming out from those wraps. And I just want to make sure that I grab the right one. So in this case, I'm just taking one of the front wires here, doesn't matter what side you start with. And then as I'm pushing the wraps down, kind of holding them into place the best I can, I'm going to pull on this length. So it basically pulls it tighter over the top of the stone. So that is on the one side there. Then I'm going to just single out the wire on the other side. That's also the front one. So again, I'm grabbing hold of that length. I'm pushing down on my wraps and then just pulling on that base wire. You can see it pulls in over the stone, and you will find that it will probably get a bit messy up here, but don't worry too much about that just yet, so we can always adjust it. Then next I need to single out the wires that are just behind those. So again, start with one side, make sure you grab the very next wire and then start to pull that. Again, you can see that gets brought in. Now obviously we don't want that bringing in as close to the other one as this, so I just want to make sure there's a bit of gap between them, and this way you can just take your time, adjust this and get it into the exact position that you want them to be, and just do a bit at a time. So I'm then moving back to the other side again, get the equivalent one, keep hold of the wraps there and then pull this in. I like to just smooth out my wires at the top as well, and then you can just take your time and decide where you want these wires to be. Now what we then also need to do is capture this from the back, because obviously otherwise the stone will just fall out of the back like that. So we needed to be in there securely, and it's the same principle. I'm keeping hold of the wraps there at the very top the best I can, and then want to single out the very back wire. So I've got the first one here. Make sure to grab that, and then I need to make sure that this wire goes over the top on the back here of the stone, so you can just help it along if you need to, and then pull that tight, and you can see again that goes in over the stone. So these are the ones that are going to capture the stone from the back, and of course we just need to get the one on the other side as well, which is this one here. So push down on the wraps and then pull this very back wire. There we go. And of course you can always just shape things into place however you want them to be, but then I like to flip it back to the front because we just want to kind of get all this in order before we start fastening anything into place. So again, make sure that the front especially looks how you want it to. So if you need to adjust the distances between any other wires, just do that. And then what we've also ended up with is a wire here on the outer edge that obviously is going to stay there, because that's going to make sure the cabochon stays in place on the outer edges as well. But once you're happy with it, we just want to make sure to kind kind of secure the top in place the best possible. So you can always do a few more wraps if you need to, if it's moved a little bit out of place. And again, making sure that those wraps become nice and tight. And then to really fasten everything into place, what I'm going to do is start to take some of these lengths of wires and basically bend them downwards over the top of the stone. So I like to kind of start with the front ones just to make sure that they basically stay in place and also keep the shape over the stone that I want them to have. So take one at a time, and then I'm gonna make sure it keeps its shape on the stone here. So you can kind of use your thumb to hold on to that. And then you want to push this down over the top, right up against the wrap, and just bring it straight down. And you can always just smooth out the wire. So that one is basically in place now. I'm going to take another wire. So you can take the one from the other side, and again, make sure it stays in place, because the wires over the top of the stone here can move as we're bringing them down. So just keep an eye on that. Bring it down right up against the wraps. And I basically want to repeat this with almost all of these lengths here. So just taking one length of wire at a time, bring them down over the front here. And I'm also going to flip it to the back and do the same with the very back wires. So grab a back wire, bring it down, and these ones I'm going to make sure to leave towards the back of the cabochon, and the same with the other back one, because we just want to also use some of these to capture the cabochon a bit more in place, because as you can probably tell, just having this one length of wire on either side around the edge, it can kind of still slip out a little bit. So we just want to make sure that we do capture it securely in place. But then we need to make sure that we're left with two lengths of wires that we haven't bent down, because what I'm going to do is use these to actually make the bail with. And for that, what I'm going to do is go back to my weaving wire that's still attached here under where we bent all the wires down, and it's still attached to the reel as well. And I'm just going to pick up the end that's attached to the reel, and then I literally want to use these two lengths of wires from a bail. So make sure that they're nice and straight so we don't have any unwanted kinks or bends in them. And then you can of course choose whatever kind of weave you want to, but I'm just going to use the same weave as I used down here where we attached all the wires together. So I'm going to go around the bottom base wire by itself, over the top of both of them, and then just around the top one by itself. So as you can see, the same weave with just two base wires, and then I have the length that I need for the bail. Bearing in mind this is going to be folded over, so it's going to be about half the length of this. And just for reference, my weave is just a bit over 1.5 centimeters long. Now what I'm going to do is go in and cut off the excess wire because we're done weaving, but you just want to make sure to leave a bit of a tail here. And then we need to shape the bail. So first of all, what I'm going to do is just push it forward a bit. So you can see it kind of comes forward at an angle like that. And then I'm just going to take another crochet hook. You can obviously use whatever kind of mandrel you have that fits the size you want the bail to be, and just put it behind the weave section, just about the midpoint. Bend it all the way around so it comes down behind itself and basically creates the shape of the bail. And then here on the back, I just want to get it into final position. So I'm just going to separate out the wires coming from the bail to each their own side. And basically you just want to kind of incorporate them into the other lengths of wire. And you can just bring them back towards the front as well. So we have a few more wires now to decorate with. And then to fasten the bail in place, I'm going to be using the lengths that are left of the weaving wire. So just grab the length there. And then what I want to do is connect this end of the bail with some of the other wires. So I'm just going to use the two lengths of wires that are bent towards the back of the stone and basically wrap my wire around those wires as well, just so we make a nice secure connection point. So just do that a few times, and then I like to come back to my length of wire that's coming out from the bail and just wrap around that a couple of times as well. Now we still have the other length of point formula wire here, that's the other end of the tail. We then can attach this length to the other side of the bail and just secure that in place. So again, just wrap it around a few times, and what we can then do is go in and cut off the excess. So get rid of these ends of the weaving wire because we're done using them for now, and just make sure to squeeze that end in place so it's not sticking out and can catch or scratch on anything. Of course, repeat the same with the other one. And then all I have to do now is use all these lengths of wires here to decorate it with, and also of course finish them off. So I'm just going to go to the back first. It doesn't matter where you start. So I have these two lengths on the back, one towards either side, and I'm just going to use these to help just secure the back in place more, but at the same time obviously make it decorative. So you can do whatever you want to. I'm just going to be adding a few loops as the wire is coming down. So just bring the wire around, create a bit of a loop here, and I'm just making sure that this is coming towards the outer edge of the stone, and then bring it further down, and I'm just going to make this loop go in the opposite direction. Comes around a bit like this. And what I'm making sure to do is this final loop that I'm making here, I'm going to make sure that it fits nicely with the wire on the outer edge here, so we can connect those two together. And I'm also just making sure that that loop comes just beyond the widest point of the cabochon. So that's on this side. I'm going to repeat the same with the other side. You can make them symmetrical or different, that's completely up to you. Once I'm then happy with how they're going to sit on the back here, I'm going to go in and cut off the excess. So I'm going to cut off the wire right where it's meeting up with itself, like that, and then I just want to go in and flatten this down so the end of the wire obviously isn't sticking out in any way. So that side is ready. Just repeat the same with the other one, and we can then move to the front, and you just want to decide how you want yours to be. Again, we can use some of these wires to make some loops with, like what I just showed you on the back. So for instance, I'm going to just bring this a bit towards the front, and then this outer one here, I just want to add some loops, and I'm already going to start from the top here to kind of cover the top part where the bail is a bit as well. And I'm working my way down the side here, and I'm making sure that I at least have a length of either loops or coils or whatever it is along the outer edges. So something a bit like that I'm pretty happy with on this side here, and then just make loops wherever you want to. So I've added all my loops in here, so that's one option you can do for the decoration. You can also make some coils and basically turn them into little twists. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So this is where I'm grabbing my crochet hook. Of course, you can use whatever kind of size you want to, depending how large you want these little spirals to be. So just place your hook by one of these lengths of wire, and then I basically just want to coil this around the hook, get it all the way up from where the wire is coming out from, and then just basically wrap this around in a coil, making sure the wire is not overlapping. And I'm just going to do this with the full length that I have available to me. So I've ended up with this. Then I can just remove the crochet hook, and I'm just going to go straight onto the other one and do the same thing. And again, just removing the crochet hook there. Then what we can do is take our pliers and just grab the very end of the coil and just kind of hold against it, and we can pull this apart and basically open it up more. So just gently pull it here and open that up. And of course, it's up to you how you want yours to look. So you can pull it quite open, so it's just kind of a slight twist, or you can have it quite tight as well. All depends on the look that you want, but just pull it until you're happy with how it looks. And you can see we also get a longer length, and just repeat the same with the other one. And then you just want to place these into position. You can add a bit of wave into them just to make them more organic. Figure out exactly where you want them to sit. And then again, we just need to cut these down where we want these twists to end. So wherever you want to cut it, I just like to make sure that I'm cutting it so the end of the wire that's going to be left is going to be in towards the stone, so not kind of sticking out and away from the stone, but something like that. So the end here, when I push it down, is basically pretty much touching the stone rather than being out at the front. And then all that's left to do now is just secure it in a few places to make sure it's going to stay as it is and obviously not come out. So for that, I'm going to just cut a length of my point formula, doesn't matter how long, just enough to work with. And the most important places are the loops here at the back where they meet up with the outer frame, and also the ones on the front there that meet up with the outer frame. So basically I'm going to attach my point formula wire to the outer frame first of all, and I'm just going to wrap it around a few times like that. So I've wrapped it about 3 times or so, and then I'm going to first run into the loop there on the back, and I'm going to catch onto that by basically using the figure of 8 weave. So right now my wire is coming up and over the base wire on the side, so I need to make sure I'm coming underneath the base wire in the loop, and I'm just pulling that tight, and then I want to come through that loop a few times. So basically coil around the base wire, creating that loop, and then of course as I'm tightening this, make sure that the loop is sitting really close to the outer frame. And I just like to do about 3 wraps before I then want to move my way back to the outer frame. So I'm coming through that again, and I'm also making sure my wraps are always nice and close together and not overlapping each other. And then I'm back to the frame, and I'm just going to then coil around here a few more times, because what I can tell is that the loop on the front here is not that far away, so I might as well use the same length of wire. So again, I'm going to go through this loop, so I create that figure of 8 weave and just tighten that so this also gets nice and tight up against that outer frame, and just wrap through this loop a few times. And then I'm making my way back to the outer frame again, and that's where I just prefer to finish off my wire. So just make sure to wrap it around a few times before we can then go in and cut off the excess. So cut that down, making sure that there's just enough left that I can kind of take my pliers and just continue that wrap so it gets tucked in between the base wire and the stone. And you of course want to just finish off the other end in the same way. And this is then also how you want to finish it off on the other side, just securing those loops in place to that outer frame. And what you can also do if you feel it's necessary is attach some of these loops and maybe even the twist to the wires going along the front of the cabochon in the exact same way. But you might find that it's not necessary. That's completely up to you. But otherwise, finish all that off. Then you just need to add your chain and you have your finished cabochon pumpkin ready to wear. So I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial for this wirework pumpkin cabochon pendant. And you can really make it personal depending what your preference is. Now don't forget, these cabochons will be available for sale in my shop. Links straight to them will be in the description box below the video. And while you're there, you can also sign up to my newsletter. And if you want to check out loads of other tutorials for different mediums, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.